Have you ever looked at someone's life and thought, I wonder how they ended up there? Maybe it's a woman standing in an intersection, maybe a man panhandling, or that same child dropped off at school every day, disheveled and hungry. But what if your knee-jerk reaction is wrong? What if those people we so quickly judge are more like us than we think? This is the Not That Different podcast, where we look at the stories behind the statistics, the real people behind the word homelessness. Because when we stop and listen, we start to understand something surprising. Individuals experiencing homelessness aren't those people. They're mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. They're our neighbors, the people God calls us to love. Today we're talking with Linda Uveges, the CEO of the City Mission, my boss, who oversees both Laura's Home Women's Crisis Center and Crossroads Men's Crisis Center. Linda's journey with the City Mission began as a volunteer over 20 years ago and has grown into a leadership role shaped by deep commitment, lived experience with the organization, and a passion for serving people experiencing homelessness. In this conversation, she will share her perspective on the mission, the programs we offer, and why this work continues to matter so deeply in our community. And through conversations like this one and the many episodes that we have planned, one truth will continue to come to light. We're really not that different. I'm Jamie Buxton. I'm the Senior Manager of Community Engagement at the City Mission in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's my passion to be able to share these stories with you, to unpack what homelessness really looks like, and to unpack what homelessness really looks like, and to destigmatize the word homelessness and the people who are experiencing it. Let's jump right in. I'm so excited to be able to be here with Linda. Linda and I started at the City Mission around the same time, 21 years ago. And it's my joy to not just work for her, but to work with her, to be mentored by her. And I'm really excited to kind of pick through some questions I haven't talked to you about either ever or in a really long time.
I know. I'm looking forward to it too, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, it's my joy. All right, Linda, can you take us back to the beginning? How did you first get connected with the City Mission as a volunteer?
Sure. I remember a friend of mine who told me about this new place on the west side of Cleveland that's opening its doors. And I thought, that would be really a great opportunity for me and our 5 kids. So I was at home, stay-at-home mom with 5 children and homeschooling them at the time. And I thought this would be something really good for us to get out of our little bubble and experience something outside. And so we I went for a tour at the mission at Laura's home, and I absolutely fell in love with it. When I thought of a shelter, I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit dark and kind of dirty, dorm rooms everywhere. But when I went there, it was beautiful and it was full of hope. It was light. Women had their own rooms who were single, and most of the families had their own room as well. And I just fell in love with it. And I imagined this facility being full. Yeah. And so we jumped in and became volunteers. And my husband and I and our 5 kids, we started by leading chapel and then also providing meals. At that time, there were only a few families, residing there, and loved serving as a volunteer, getting to know the women. I think what impressed me the most was I was also looking for something meaningful and that aligned with our faith. And it was clear that the mission aligned so well. And then the other thing that really drew me was the women and being able to have conversation with them where all pretenses are down. When you go to church, and it's wonderful, I love my church, but if you say, hi, how are you doing? Everybody's doing just fine.
Right.
Right. And here, when we served at Laura's home, women would just tell you the truth and that they're struggling and that they're hurting and this is difficult. And I loved having meaningful, purposeful conversation.
So imagine we're in that same space. You've got young kids, you're starting part-time. Could you ever have imagined that you'd become the CEO?
Never, never in a million years, honestly. That's not something that I set out to achieve or to climb any ladder.
Hmm.
Really, my heart was to serve wherever God wants to use me.
Hmm.
And I remember when working security, of course, was really fun. And I loved being on the front line. I love caring for individuals who would come through the doors for the
Hmm.
first time, feeling very discouraged, afraid, angry, all kinds of emotions. And being able to greet them at the door with the love of Christ. To me, it just doesn't get much better than that to
Hmm.
show that and to do it in a very practical way. And so, no, and I never imagined. And then when I was offered to be the manager of Laura's home, I was like, oh my goodness, I have arrived. I really felt like this is a dream come true. And it really was. It really, really was.
Hmm.
And so grateful for
How
that.
long was the time frame between sorry to cut you off, but I
No,
just
that's
want to
fine.
really, I know the history, so I don't want to glaze over things. How long
Sure.
from when you were part-time security till the program manager?
Yes, that's a great question.
I know.
Because I also worked a year in the kitchen.
Right.
So I was part-time security, then full-time, then security supervisor,
Hmm.
then in the kitchen for a year. So I want to say about 4 or 5 years
Okay.
before offered, really was an assistant manager
Right.
while the manager was retiring.
Hmm.
And so I sat with her for almost a year and I learned from her. And she certainly was my mentor, Pam Glicker.
Hmm.
I have so much respect for her and how she mentored me as well. Uh, and I would say, I really felt like um, this is just such a great opportunity. Even though I felt like, I don't know if I can do it, I
Hmm.
wanted to say yes to what God is calling me to do. And so I went for it and just knew that I had an incredible staff to support me and an incredible family to
Yeah.
support me as well.
And then you kept saying yes after that. So you become program manager, you go back to school.
Yes, which was really interesting because it had been over 25 years since I've been to school. I
Hmm.
graduated high school and I was offered this position, and the CEO at the time did not know I didn't have a degree.
Hmm.
And so to ask to go back to school was really overwhelming to me. And I instantly felt inadequate and scared. And I don't think I'm smart enough. I don't think I can do this. But I had great encouragement to do it, and my kids and my husband. And so I took advantage of the opportunity and again, willing to say yes and I got my degree. I loved it so much. And so then I asked the CEO at the time, would it be okay if I went and got my master's degree? What do you think about that? He goes, great. I had served about 4 years as the program manager, and he said, I'd like you to be the chief operating officer. And again, that those feelings of inadequacy, and maybe you've heard of the imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
where I thought sometimes, well, are you sure you're making the right decision? Do you really know? Because I'm not all that, and I have a lot of flaws and weaknesses. And so I was I was really struggling with being okay with that. And then I loved it because my husband, Tom, says, he goes, you've been a COO for years at home. That's what a mom does. You're in charge of operations. Like, oh yeah, that really helped me actually.
Yeah.
And so I said, sure. So I served as the COO for 6 years and loved that and loved being uh, part of operations and learning.
So you've been here for 20 plus years. How have you seen the needs change for the people that come to us?
Mm. I know it might not be the answer you're expecting, but I don't know that they've changed that much. When we talk about poverty, we talk about broken relationships.
Hmm.
And really, that's what we've seen as a common theme throughout all of these years. Many of our residents come to us who have lost all relationships, maybe due to addiction or mental illness or trauma. It could be anything. And I realize that, often say poverty is not just, I don't have enough money, but
Hmm.
it's poverty of relationships. And so
Hmm.
that's been broken. And so we see that commonly among our men and our women. And so in that sense, I think it's very similar,
Hmm.
but obviously the way that people, um, I'm trying to think of respond to it or deal with it is
Hmm.
different, right? It might be medicating, it might be numbing, it might be isolating. So there's so many ways that people respond to it, and it's all different.
Hmm.
And I I think that's real important to know that at the core, we all long to be loved and accepted. And for whatever reason, life has happened to them or they've been a victim or they also have done some things that have consequences that
Hmm.
have impacted how they live. So I guess I would go back to just that basic need and desire that we all have.
Hmm. And I think that's the perfect answer. Yes. And I totally agree. Um, the city mission is different in that we offer long term holistic programming, right? And so when you talk about kind of, I'll call them the symptoms of those lack of relationships or healthy relationships, why is it so important that we have that long term care?
Right. I don't know about you, but when I have an issue in my life, it doesn't just take me 30 days to figure it out. It takes me a while to learn a new behavior, to learn a new discipline in my life. It doesn't just change overnight. And
Hmm.
so we know, and there's studies that show this, that the best way to address what's happening inside someone's heart is to really get to the root causes. And like you said, those symptoms, those are really just what we see on the surface, but there's so much more.
Hmm.
And not until someone comes to the mission do they ever get that opportunity to really kind of unpeel and peel back those layers. And what's great, they're peeling them back in a safe environment.
Right.
You've got supportive caseworkers and staff and even your uh, individuals that are in the program with you. You're
Right.
doing this together and you're not alone. And so I love that we have the freedom to do that. And as you
Hmm.
know, we don't receive any government funding. And not that, that's all a negative thing, but for us, it gives us freedom to have a program where we can extend the length of time and be able to really look at what brought an individual here. And I think that brings dignity.
Hmm.
We're not saying what's wrong with you.
Right.
We're talking about what's happened to you.
Right.
And that's our trauma informed care approach.
Hmm.
So being able to do that, it takes time. And many people, and even myself, growing up, maybe I thought a certain thing was normal in my family, how I was raised. And then you have your own family and you're like, oh no, I think I don't, I don't want to do that. I want to do something different. And
Hmm.
so when women and men come here, they thought that, oh, this is just normal and how a family or how I was treated was okay. And once they get here and see something different,
Hmm.
the light goes on and they see, oh, that wasn't okay. And now I'm in a safe place to really unpack that and deal with whatever that was maybe in their past, and they can heal
Hmm.
from their past experiences.
Yeah. What do you wish more people that hear about us or see what we're doing or even see those people on a street corner? What do you wish they knew about what it takes to move from crisis to what it takes to move from crisis to stability.
Yes. Good question. Before I came to the mission, I'll be very honest, I felt people, um, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, right?
Mhm.
What are you doing? You can work. Honestly, I just had all those kind of assumptions about individuals. And not until I came here did I learn uh, what individuals go through. And many of our residents are victims of trauma
Mhm.
and mental illness. And one thing that I've learned too is, well, I remember at the front desk at Laura's home, and mom came in, and she was really not very nice.
Mhm.
And I am very naive and new to my role as a security guard. Like, welcome to the city, welcome to Laura's home. I'm so glad you're here. And she looked at me like, who are you?
Mhm.
And you know nothing about me. You don't know my life. You don't know what I've been through. And you don't look anything like me. And she literally said, you're going to go home to your nice little family and your nice little house and your nice little neighborhood. And certainly she made assumptions about me as
Right.
well, not knowing me, but she wasn't wrong. And I realized she wasn't angry at me. She was scared.
Mhm.
And once you build that trust, it changed everything. And you could see her soften over time. So I say that um, to say people, individuals never start, someday I want to go to the city mission. No, it's hard. It isn't what they planned. This isn't their dream come true.
Right.
So they are scared. There's fear of trust. And especially with moms,
Mhm.
they are afraid, like, will my children be safe? Will my belongings be safe? How will I do this? And are you gonna hurt me like everybody else has? Are you gonna abandon me like everybody else has? So those are the realities of those that we serve, those individuals we serve. And, I mentioned just pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And I, I love that I heard a quote from actually one of the Supreme Court justices saying, what if they don't have any bootstraps? We have resources, more than maybe somebody else
Mhm.
does. And those who have experienced generational poverty, they don't. And they don't know how. So
Right.
we need to come alongside, especially as believers in the church and Christian organizations. We need to help and talk about what does that look like and how
Mhm.
can we help you achieve your goals. So I guess there's always more behind the person that you don't know. And don't make assumptions. Don't just think they're lazy or they don't want to work. That's not been my experience here with
Mhm.
people we've served. Sometimes
Yeah.
there'll be somebody that just going to take advantage of the system, but we still get to serve them
Right.
and show them something different.
And in my opinion, some of those end up to be some of our greatest testimonies at the end
Yes.
because they came saying, I'm not going to participate in this and this isn't going to be good for me, or I'm not really interested. And usually that's when God does his greatest work.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so we've established that the start is difficult and people come hopeless, right? So,
Mhm.
what does success look like for the individuals as they complete and get ready to leave the mission?
Oh, that's great. You're asking me some tough questions. That's good. I love it. Success. What does success look like? First and foremost, it's sharing the gospel and it's hopefully reconnecting them to their faith. Many of our residents have grown up in a home where going to church was every Sunday. A
Hmm.
grandmother that did that and prayed for them. And so, first of all, we want to make sure the gospel is a priority. So
Mhm.
we hope, and that's why we have 2 chaplains on staff. And that's why every single person on our staff has a relationship with Jesus.
Mhm.
And so that we can care for them in that way. And so success is, seeing that transformation of the heart. And success isn't always you got a home or you got an apartment or you
Right.
got a job. Those are good things. But the success is the transformation. And as our core value says, we believe that God transforms lives. It's He that does the
Mhm.
work. We are just here um, to be servants, to help others understand
Right.
and to present the gospel in a very clear and compassionate way. So I think success is going to look different for each person. Some will be reunited with family.
Mhm.
Some will, maybe it's better that they don't and that they have established a different support system.
For sure.
So my hope is that when an individual leaves here, that they are clearly um, aware of the gospel and that has resonated in their heart.
Mhm.
And then also that they have a new support system and way to thrive in
Mhm.
in life. We want thriving, not just surviving. And that's sometimes hard to measure.
How do you balance being the visionary leader of the city mission, but also having to deal with practical programming of the day-to-days?
Yes, that has been a big challenge for me, to be honest. And because I came from operations, I came from manager of Laura's home, and I love it. So, one thing that I realized as I continued to progress in the mission, I moved further and further away from the residents.
Mhm.
And that made me really sad. And so I have made sure that I've taken steps to be connected to our residents. And I want to make sure that I, I was at Laura's home today and I talk to the ladies and just sit with them at lunchtime or ask about their stories, or the men in our warehouse
Mhm.
who are our residents and how are you doing? What brought you here? What phase are you in? How's it going? What's your favorite class? So those are ways that I like to stay connected to our residents. And as far as the shift, I remember specifically when I became the COO, and it was at one of our staff picnics. And I realized that God has moved me like, no, Linda, you're no longer the manager of Laura's home overseeing the residents there and the program, but I've given you a different group to care for, and that was the staff. As a
Mhm.
COO, I felt like it was the staff that God has brought me to care for. And so I think a lot about that, um, to make sure I try to stay in my lane and be that visionary. And you can ask anybody on my team, they'll let you know, oh, Linda, maybe that's not, do you need to be doing this? And one thing I learned over the last few years is that God has given me unique gifts. And I used to kind of downplay those or think I'm not enough, but instead I've embraced them and like, oh, this is how you created me. This is
Mhm.
the gift that you gave me. So I'm going to embrace those and walk in them in faith, not because I'm anything special, but because God has given you unique gifts and me unique gifts and each one of our staff. And so I want to walk in that and not shy away from it. Sometimes there's a balance of
Mhm.
that, So, and I love to problem solve. I love what there's a problem. All right, I got it. But there's an amazing staff on
Mhm.
my leadership team and you and managers. They can do the same. And I'm available as they need me.
So the work can be hard and overwhelming. And just like you've shared, you're still connected to residents and hearing their stories. What keeps you hopeful, Linda?
Hmm. Well, it has to be the gospel. It really is, because God changed my life, and I know He can change others. And that is my only hope for transformation. And one of my favorite verses is in Romans 5:8, but God demonstrates His love toward us. And while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's our hope. Our
Mm-hmm.
hope is only in Jesus. And we can't fix every problem. We won't. And I don't think God calls us to do that. But I can go home at night feeling good, knowing that we've offered hope to every person here. And especially when I was the manager at Laura's home, it felt pretty discouraging at times. And I know our caseworkers feel that. This
Right.
is so discouraging. You have a client or a resident who has made great progress, and then they relapse. And you
Right.
kind of question, well, what good is anything we taught them? Did it make a difference? And it does. We are planting seeds. We are giving the hope that we know, and it's up to God to transform their lives. So my hope is in Him, not me, and not any one of our staff, to be honest, to make that change, but it will be in Him, and it will be in His timing. And it might take a resident 2-3 times. And
Right.
we know that not everybody gets it the first time. Again, I don't get it the first time.
Right. Thank you so much. I think we share, uh, uh, we have a common passion for being advocates for the city mission and for the men, the women, and the children, and really having the joy of getting to be in the community and sharing that with others. What would you like our listeners who feel disconnected from poverty or homelessness? What do you want them to understand better from
Mhm.
hearing you today?
Right. Well, like I said, I didn't know. So I spent a lot of time listening and observing and being curious. I think the curiosity of what individuals are going through, instead of making assumptions or judgments or bias, any of those, learn and honest, get involved. It doesn't have to be at the city mission. It could be in any place that you feel passionate about to serve,
Mhm.
whether it's those who are hungry or those who are in prison. Get involved and learn. Uh, so I guess realizing that every single person has dignity, uh, that changes everything for me.
Mhm.
I don't have feelings of judgment or criticism when I remember that everyone is made in the image of God. So if you start there, I guarantee that there's a place for you to serve, to volunteer, and to understand who we serve, again, or any other organization that you feel passionate about. So learn and be educated on that.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. I mean, it
Yes.
really is your podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this and to be able to be a mouthpiece for the mission, and more than that, for men, women, and children experiencing homelessness.
Yes. Thank you, Janie.
Thanks for joining us on Not That Different. We hope that this episode cleared your mind, helped you understand more about the people that we serve here, and in general, kind of destigmatize what homelessness is to you and how close it really can be to you personally. If you got excited or your heart started to beat fast as you heard Linda talk about volunteering or getting involved, we'd love for you to join us here at the City Mission in Cleveland. Check out our website at thecitymission.org. And if you're not close to here, please find a mission, find somewhere where you can get involved helping others. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will look forward to seeing you again soon.